welcome to another episode of Gov Tech Today, where we aim to bridge .com and .gov. We have a very special guest that I'm super excited about here in the studio today, Liana Bailey-Crimmins. She's the state of California's Chief Information Officer and the Director of the California Department of Technology. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, audience. Gosh, that's quite a thing about .gov and .com and just be able to get us all on the same page.
Right? Yeah. Imagine that, like everyone working together, rowing in the same direction. Well, we have been back and forth on having you in here for a while now, and I'm so glad we made it happen. First of all, you've been in government for a very long time. You must have started when you were like 10 years old,
10
right?
Is what I tell everyone. Yeah.
I like that. You're one of the unique CIOs, to me at least, who's worked on the business side of government. Like you've run programs and then you've also worked in IT, obviously. So what lessons did you really learn throughout your career and sort of jumping back and forth and maybe seeing things from those two perspectives?
Well, over 3 decades, so that is a long time. My entire adult career has been working in the public space. And like you said, I've been able to traverse IT. And then I had the privilege of working at correctional healthcare for Clark Kelso.
Legend.
Yes, very much a legend. I always say he's an eclectic leader who has been, the receiver, has been a state CIO.
He's like the fixer, really, is how I describe him. Like if there's a problem somewhere, just throw Clark in there. Like he'll handle it.
And of course, he's a great McGeorge teacher as well. So a law professor. But what I would say that I have learned over the years is really putting people first. So you've heard about the strategic imperatives of putting people first, security always, and leading with purpose. And so when I think of all the challenges we may have had over the last 30 plus years, turning those into opportunities. So putting people first, 1 in 5 Californians do not have access to high-speed internet. And so thinking about the business side of it, right, of working in programs, the importance of delivering benefits, making sure that it's affordable, that it's not all about the technology, but really about that interaction that you're having at the human level. And so one of the things that we are doing is building the largest broadband middle mile network in the nation, first in the nation. So we're excited about dealing with the digital divide. And security is always very important from a threat perspective. So at CalPERS, I was also a CISO, in addition to being Chief Health Director and CIO. I know many, many hats. So security is not very far from anything that I'm thinking about. And as the threats continue to evolve, I want to make sure that what we're doing is maturing organizations and giving them the tools that they need, working with the vendor community to make sure that we have resilience when those bad guys are knocking on our door, since they are doing that all the time.
It's going to happen, right?
Yes,
it's not if, but when and how you respond on the cybersecurity stuff. We're definitely going to get more into that. You said something that's sort of striking home for me, and that's, getting everyone working together. And I think you're one of the best at doing that. Like your door is always open. You always respond to the vendor community. You're out and about everywhere, talking to the vendors, meeting with them. I mean, like from your perspective, what makes a vendor super successful? What makes you want to reply to that email when they're like, hello, Director Bailey-Crimmins, let me sell you something today. Like what to you makes a great vendor partner?
It is partner, right? It's not transactional. So I would say I just would always recommend that someone understand what the priorities or vision is for that leader, if it be a director of health and human services or DMV, what is the priority in making sure that what their conversations that they're bringing to the table is more strategic and that they really want you to be successful, not just to sell the product. Because I think selling the product and the software is fairly easy. It's really the relationship and the caring and feeding of that long term. And I've had the blessings of knowing a lot of different individuals over my tenure. And no matter what company that they worked at, I always knew that they had my best interest. And sometimes my best interest wasn't always their product, but they were willing to just have a frank conversation with me, seek to understand the challenges that I'm experiencing, and really helping me direct. In some cases, it's their partners, that were helping me. But I feel like when they come from an authentic and genuine place, you can smell out just a sell versus someone really caring about you, your department, your state, and what effect that you want to make on California.
Well, and it's funny, like Sacramento is a small town, and I've experienced this in state capitals all across the country. In the IT industry or in state government, like no one ever leaves. Even on the vendor side, no one ever leaves technology sales. They just go to a different company. And so developing those relationships through like a 30-year career, I'm sure you see some of the same people that were trying to sell you something from undoubtedly a different company, 20 years ago. And so it's the same people. So you've sort of established those relationships over all of that time.
And sometimes it might be a conflicting. They told me it was like the best thing
Right.
at one company
No one's
X,
ever going to tell
and,
you their stuff sucks.
and then now they're selling the competitor.
You're like,
Um,
wait a minute, what?
but usually they're really still good about telling you because no product exactly the same. There's always something unique within the solution. So
Yep.
if they could come at it from like, yes, I know I was selling X, but this is what makes Y even better. And again, the relationships are the most important. There are people that I have no problem picking up a call from, just no matter what company they're
Totally.
with. Yeah,
Well, because you're going to get the honest truth from some of them. And I think that's really what makes a great salesperson. Like someone that can come to you and be like, we're really good at A. Like, we're not the best at B. So I
right.
know you guys need B. Maybe you should look at this other stuff, but like, we're the best at A. And here's everything behind us that will tell you that. You don't just have to take my word. So I think that's really good advice, actually. And I love, we've been on this for a while. It's not vendor, it's partner. Like
Yes.
even the vendors get offended when you call them vendors. They're like,
But then they need to act like partners,
right?
right? I mean, it's when you think about a partner, a friendship, a relationship, it's two-way. It's not one way.
Yeah.
So that would be guidance that I'd have for the vendor community. Is the conversation you're having with your government partner, is it one way where I'm telling you all the things that are the greatest things that I have to offer, but I'm not sitting back and listening as much as I'm talking? I have actually sat, and I won't tell you which vendor, but I have sat through like a 30-minute meeting and literally the engineer talked the entire time. And the last 2 minutes is like, oh, did you really want to hear what we are looking for? But they just had to get it out. And
Yeah.
so I understand there's pressure and there's nerves and lots of things, but what is our mom and dad used to say? We have two ears and one mouth. So just leveraging that as much as possible. Listen.
I like that. I like that a lot. I also think it's important, and I hound on some of my clients about this too, of like, do your homework. I tell them like the discovery meeting is dead because this is the public sector. Like you should be able to do your discovery by reading the strategic plan, reading their budgets, reading the legislation impacting that department. So we're not coming in to talk to you about a generic pitch. We're coming in to say, here is Envision 2026. Here is how we align to this. Here's CalSecure. Here's how our products meet these different initiatives. So I love that too when people are like, can you get us a meet and greet? We would love some FaceTime with Liana or one of her staff. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that, guys. Like, that's a waste of their time, and they're never going to take my call again if I'm wasting their time. So, I mean, I think that's really important too. Like, this is a public sector, emphasis on public. Like, everything you guys are working on is public. And so, doing your homework is fairly easy to do when you're working in this industry.
It is fairly easy because we're very transparent, right? Because like you said, they're all eyes are on us. I mean,
Yep.
there is, yeah. So that's the good and the downside of being in government. But I would say it's also understanding strategy, doing your homework, but then asking some of the questions. I see that you're talking about inclusive digital services. That is a goal. These are the objectives, but what's the story under the story that I need to understand about this, because you can't accomplish everything in 12 months. So what are the priorities that you have over
So
the
that I
next
can go back and fix them for
or
you.
well
Yeah.
or again, figure out kind of how that conversation, and even if it's not something today, it might be something then 3 months or 6 months, or you just I feel like there's a story under the story. So yes, do your homework, but also be okay with learning more about your client. I mean, that's what client relationship management is all about, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, you're one of my favorite people to meet with and to have in a meeting because I've been in meetings with you where you have said, why can't we do that? And I love that question because a lot of government is, we can't do that. And like, why? Why can't we? Are there rules? Are there laws? Like what if it's just we've never done it that way, then that's not really good enough for you. And I love that. Um, how has that sort of helped you in like your career and frankly in like establishing California as a leader in thinking outside of the box?
Well, that's what innovation is, right? Innovation is the status quo doesn't prevent us from doing something that's brilliant and great
Yeah.
for our workforce, the public, so our departments. So I think that some people get locked. It's easy because we like things to, I mean, change management is one of the most difficult things, right? So when people get into technology, like, oh, I want to do all the new exciting things. But once they get in, they kind of want to do the same things over and over. And even the business leaders automate what I already do.
Yep.
Like,
We're gonna buy a new
oh,
system.
goodness.
I have 1,000 requirements, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, this is the system you already have.
Exactly,
Like,
exactly. So
wait a minute.
if you could clear the plate and what is statutory, regulatory, what is it that you have to deliver? And then can you look at the problem or challenge or goal a little bit differently? And that is not that, I mean, the tech is there to say this is what the technology and the industry can do, but it really starts with the business leaders sitting in a room, your CEOs, your boards, like what is the art of the possible and being open to doing things very differently. Do you need all 50 things on a form?
Yeah.
It just because automating the current form is probably not very innovative. And so if we're not going to do something differently, it's because the current way is the best way. That's the only reason that I would ever say that that's okay. We should always be looking at what is next and
I
what
love
is an
that.
opportunity.
Yeah. All right, that'll be a quote. Like we'll pull that one out as a quote. I like that a lot. So for those people that maybe aren't super familiar with the structure of California and sort of what falls under your purview and what doesn't, we're like a federated model. Why don't you explain to people sort of what that means when it comes to purchasing and rule following and authority?
So the state CIO reports directly to the governor, and obviously through an agency. We report through GovOps agency. And so as a federated, it means that I am 100% responsible, but don't have the budget and all the resources underneath me. So there's 13,000.
That sounds awful.
No, it's all good. 13,000 technologists in the state of California across between 150 departments, boards, different. And so they have missions. If it's healthcare, transportation, state hospitals, they all have missions. And so you have CIOs working underneath each of these agencies that are doing the right thing on behalf of their department. They get an IT budget, they've got projects, they're focusing on all those things that are closest to their constituents. And then that rolls up to an agency. So I work with all the agencies' CIOs through the State Technology Council, and then I set policy. So this is kind of the interesting part that CDT is, we are now calling support agency, but it's typically known as a control agency where you have policies and you have guidelines and you're really telling everyone the safe way, the safeguards in deploying technology, because we know that we need to do things on behalf of the public that retains trust, accessibility. If everyone was doing something differently, we wouldn't be able to serve the public. Because in the public's eyes, they don't care which department you're in.
Yeah.
They see government and California government as government, and we owe that one California, all government view. But in addition, we have to be able to be flexible enough to allow agencies and departments to do what's necessary under the vision of their directors. So yes, a lot of accountability, but again, the budgets
Something goes
are down.
wrong.
I'm in
You're
front
the
of the
throat to choke.
Yes.
Something goes right. It's probably that department
It is
that
the
like
other
wins
department.
an award, right?
And that is
You get
absolutely okay.
CIO of the year. Yep, I love it. Wow. So it's a lot. It's big.
We're the fourth largest economy now.
Fourth largest in the whole world. I love that. And growing.
Yes.
And continuing to grow, which I also love. Something that I love that you guys are working on is really doing outreach to the local governments. So if you're selling to government in California, my motto is like, don't sleep on local governments, because counties and cities combined actually spend more on technology than the state does. So when people are like, oh, we don't need counties are small, it's like, wait, no, they're not. Like they are also massive spenders in this area and have, frankly, a lot more flexibility than the state does, right? Like they don't have to follow SAM and the state technology manual and all
Are
of
you
these.
telling me my policies are are difficult?
It's hard, yeah.
It is, yeah.
Your policies and DGS's policies and the governor's office policies and the legislature, yeah. It's a nightmare. I mean, like, trust me, I'm thankful. It makes an entire market for people like me that can help these companies navigate it, but it's difficult. Like, if you can figure out California, the rest of the states seem really easy. And frankly, the rest of the counties seem really easy. Like, no problem. I can do business there. I've already tackled California. So, something that you guys have been looking at as a service provider is working with those counties. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So for our service provider side of OTech, there's about 49 city, county, municipalities that utilize our services. So either through contract vehicles, we want to make it so easy. I know Riverside was they were so wonderful to allow us to utilize their Microsoft contract back then. Anything we could do to be reciprocal is great.
Yep.
I know the challenges across the state is different. Obviously Galt is very different than LA, and LA is
Sure.
very different than San Joaquin County. But I feel like the more we as a technology community can share and partner, the better. In fact, when we were working a lot right now on the LA, fires coming together at the city level, obviously we worked with the Pasadena and LA CIO and
Yep.
then the county of LA, just understanding their challenges and how the state could complement, not substitute, because we're not here to, they have their own responsibilities, accountabilities back to their
Yep.
mayor or their supervisors. But just coming together and making sure that what we're doing is helping survivors and putting people first. So are there things that we could be doing at the state level, contract wise, to make it easier for them to procure? Is there user research? I know Office of Data Innovation's been doing a lot of sentiment reports that they can learn of what's going on and how people are feeling. Owners are business owners may be feeling very differently than a renter.
Yep.
And then you had a lot of individuals, they had reverse mortgages and their homes were the way they were actually receiving income, and now that home may no longer be there, and so just community loss. And so as Governor Gavin Newsom said, it's in all government. It shouldn't matter to a survivor if you're city, county, state, even Fed. We should all be looking at how do we provide digital services better that you apply, and you don't have to figure out how do you navigate the nuances of every single department.
Yep.
So we owe it to Californians to continue to do better.
I love that. And you're right. It is so important, especially like these people are at the most vulnerable moments in their life and some of the most like heart-wrenching but meaningful stories. Like, you mentioned broadband, and I've heard you in a speech talk about, the student that goes to the McDonald's because they don't have Wi-Fi at home. And during the pandemic, that was how they attended school. So I love, when you sort of humanize this with like, this is exactly what we do everyday means. And frankly, it's why everyone wants to work in public service. Like, it's not glitz and glamour. It's really hard work. And there has to be like a deeper mission behind what you do to keep incredible workers like yourself and your team working for us for 30 plus years. So thank you for that. Thank you for your service, first of all.
Thank you.
What is the toughest part of your job?
I always, me, I'm always looking at the glass half full as much as possible. So wherever there's a challenge, I look at opportunities. I mean, as we look at tight budget times, but again, I've seen budget. So
Yeah.
can we? And when I was at CalPERS and I was a CIO, it was interesting because when we were doing the strategic plan, we sat across the business and said, okay, what do you see as innovation? They said, I don't need the new shiny object. I just need you to look at how do we use the technology we already have just more innovatively. And so having those conversations, I think, is what matters. And sometimes I see a challenge with IT is that we want to immediately go to a solution, and it takes time to have the right conversation. That's why the RFI Square, the request for innovative ideas, is so wonderful, because what you're doing is you're not coming out with a whole set of requirements saying, I know exactly what I want, and I want everyone to just fit into that square
Right.
peg, right?
Or a lot of times there's only one that fits into that square peg, and the vendor community reads it and they're like, they're buying that square peg. Like, well, you're not going to waste our time.
And be surprised, a lot of business departments aren't really trying to only get one. They just don't realize that the more that they add to those requirements becomes increasingly more difficult. And especially for small business or veteran owned. And so how do you look at this from what is the challenge? like we were just
Yeah.
saying before. What is the statutory requirements? What are the challenges? What's the goal? And then open it up to the vendor community and say, how would you solve this problem? If you were in our shoes with these constraints, what would you do for us?
Yep.
Come with your innovative hat on and not only just give us a presentation that makes it look like you can do everything, but you're actually willing to get into a sandbox,
Yep.
get a little dirty, and show us with our own data how we could make this work. And so this brings the product testing up closer in the life cycle so that when you get to a contract, you as a vendor community and as a department are in a much better place. You've kind of almost gone through the discovery stage and know what exactly you want to deliver.
Yeah.
And it would be great is don't try to do something that's a 6 or 7 year project that now there are big ones like a payroll system or fiscal or something, but most of the time is how do you scale it? How do you do a minimal viable product? Because what we've talked about is the technology is just at increasing at such a rate that in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, the technology and the features are going to be so different. If you lock yourself in the feature set today, you're not opening yourself up to what of the art of the possible in the future. So I think it's just so important that people think of what can I do in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months? What do I do with a district? What can I open myself up for the software? So I'm always getting to take advantage of what the latest is out there. Because the last thing we want is legacy 3 years into something that we've already walked down and funded, and now we're expecting to sustain this for the next 10 to 15 years and expect it never to change.
Well, and I think having that communication on the front end and like we've had conversations about this where you're like, Jen, why did no one bid on this one project? And I'm like, I'll tell you exactly why. It was because of these requirements. They can't do these. You're like, why didn't no one tell me? And I'm like, because they're afraid of you. Like they shouldn't be, but like no one wants to be like, hey, state, you're messing this up. Like I think a lot of the vendors that I've seen that are successful are willing to have those tough conversations and be like, hey, these requirements are going to limit your bidding pool. And that's not going to get you the best place you need to be at the end of the day. And the really smart and savvy departments, and yours being one of them, are like, okay, like, do we need to have that requirement? Why do we legally have to? Can we eliminate that and open up the vendor pool a little more? So I love like having some of those tough conversations up front of like, why are we asking for this? And maybe we don't know the whole world, and vendor community, we don't either. Like, it's like, why do you have to have this? Well, here's the law. Like, here's why. You want to change it? Go ahead and go to the legislature because you have to change a law. But a lot of that, without having those discussions up front gets lost until you're 18 months down the road and you're canceling a procurement because no one bid or something crazy happened. So I love that. I love RFI Squared. Let's talk about some of the other cool emerging technology things you guys are doing. And I'm specifically interested in AI as it relates to cybersecurity. So we've had a couple episodes where we're talking about cybersecurity, and the threat actors out there are using AI left and right when it comes to like trying to attack us and taking down systems.
The phishing emails are no longer looking for misspellings or,
even the most resistant of gullible people, like they're getting taken down. It's crazy. And like, I've always been like, even in state government, it's like, it's that one person that like clicks on the email, and that's still why a lot of the breaches happen, right? Like, well, it looked safe.
90% is still social engineering.
Safe. So what's the state doing? First of all, broadly, what's the state doing on generative AI? Give us a little. Our listeners, you can go back on episodes. We've dove into this deep, but what are you guys doing? And frankly, congrats. Like, California is leading the way on this. I went to, procurement officers conferences and IT conferences in California. AI adoption is happening there. The governor was just out earlier last week on AI and the successes here. So what are we doing there, and specifically as it relates to cybersecurity?
So again, the Governor Gavin Newsom in 2023, September 6th, just the first executive order that I'm at the scale of which not only just the benefits, but to also be conscious enough on the guardrails. I mean, my hat's off to him to be very holistic. And so he put all of us on task to look at this, but look at this, making sure that we're looking at vulnerable populations, making sure that whatever we're doing isn't bringing bias, undue security, but do it very safely. And so we were first in the nation to establish a generative AI sandbox. And so it was government managed, so that it was a way to take existing data, put it in a very safe environment, a copy of it, and then allow it to be fed into a large language model, see what it comes back from a generative perspective, bring that back into the state because the state owns that data,
Yep.
and then having human in the loop, having the people that are closest to the benefit delivery, looking at the data being fed in, was it the right data output? What do we want to do with this? And we are also first in the nation to scale. So we had 10 proof of concepts going simultaneously with 5 different use cases. And we are now issuing contracts, and things are moving forward when it comes to obviously CDTFA, as they're thinking about how do they improve customer experience,
Yep.
because you have a lot of seasoned individuals out there. In fact, what we found is some of the seasoned people answered it faster than the generative AI, but the other individuals that are moderate to novice, how do you bring them up to that
Mhm.
level? And generative AI was just a game changer when it came to customer experience and service, of enabling, not necessarily answering the question on behalf of to the public, but how do you empower the employees to do things more efficient and have that information at the tip of their fingers? So we're doing that. Transportation has got a lot going on, as you saw.
Yep.
Secretary Mashakin doing a lot, because when we looked at, all of us have to drive here or cycle, or we're interacting, and their goal is to have 0 fatalities. So any of us that have lived in California, we know that there are unfortunately, deaths on our roads. And a lot of times it takes a long time to get a crosswalk or a roundabout. And so it's a lot of data that goes into that, from an engineering perspective. Generative AI is able to accumulate all that data and then be able to run different scenarios and provide the safety engineers an opportunity to say, what would be the best outcome here, and do it much faster so we don't have to wait for more fatalities to happen. So it's just really exciting to see them to do this and look at the challenge, and then look at how this could scale out.
Yeah.
And then we're obviously working with Health and Human Services. They have their proof of concepts, and they're working through that whole process as well. And then we've got some round 2. And so more is coming. And we launched our new project delivery lifecycle, which is, again, helping people get that opportunity to do the sandboxing and looking at what the products can offer with your data, and then allowing departments to make the right decisions. So I'm really excited. California is doing a lot. And we're also looking at how do we get tools to the workforce, like we just launched, Microsoft Chat. How do we get Adobe, anything that has incidental, people feeling very comfortable with utilizing this technology to solve their problems.
I think that's awesome. And I love including AI and generative AI in PDL. And because I think one of the things I've heard is like, well, our department didn't get picked for the POC, the proof of concept. So like we're not doing generative AI. And I'm like, no, please. Like we want everybody to, you don't have to get picked for, the round 1, round 2 to do this stuff. Like there are guidelines, there are guardrails, all of these things are in place thanks to that executive order and the crazy amount of work that went into it, for everyone to sort of try these and figure out how it's incorporated into a normal technology project, right? Like Gen AI isn't going to be this shiny thing in the sky really immediately. Like in the next couple years, it's going to be something that's included in sort of everything. So I think you guys have done a great job with that.
Well, thank you. And Gartner has said, basically in the next 2 years, every piece of software and hardware is going to have something
Right?
in it when it comes to artificial intelligence.
Yep.
So it's very, very important. And as you were also talking about, it was the security.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously PDL, we're open for business. So yes, everyone, come and
Yep.
talk to us. But when it comes to cybersecurity, you have to use AI to defend against AI. Human beings are amazing, but technology has its purpose. And so when you're thinking about protecting someone, so that even if they do click on something that's been social engineered, that they're still protected from the threat that could have happened. Because
Right.
we've all seen it go bad. And we want to make sure that I've talked to you about the K through 12, the School for the Deaf and Blind,
Mm-hmm.
literally between CalSIC and ourselves. And we had the Microsoft Dart team. We had to rebuild 3 schools from the ground up from Active Directory. And it was just knowing that those students needed that technology to interact with their friends and their teachers. And it's not like just go home and read a book and we'll bring you back online in a couple months.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, when you're special needs and you have kids, you need this technology. And it was a ransomware. Um, and so it's just the things that we can do not only to prevent, but I always say CalSIC is great on the incident response, but our job is also to help folks recover. We
Right.
need them to recover. We need them to recover quickly. So I think it's just how to use technology, AI to do both.
Well, and I
Um,
think cybersecurity is kind of a slam dunk for using generative AI too, because first of all, there's never enough resources, right? Like you're always short in cybersecurity. I would say like the majority of the new budget requests that I see coming through for technology are for cybersecurity, and it's essential, right? Like it's a foundation of having a successful operations program. And so you have the fear of like, is Gen AI going to replace my job? And that's not what any of this Gen AI is doing. Frankly, like it's giving you guys the resources that you need and freeing up your teams a little bit to do all of the other work that they haven't been able to do.
well, and I think what it does is it accelerates our ability to make really good decisions on behalf of the public. So if you could think of a virtual assistant that just went through all that data and said, would you think A? What do you think about B? And then as you think about prompt engineering, is how do you continue to refine it? You don't just take the answer and run with it. It really just changes our skill set, but it allows us to really provide good policy decisions a lot faster.
I love it.
And so one of our proof of concepts with Health and Human Services was surveyors go into these hospitals and they're doing all the notes and their
Yeah.
incidents with patients, other issues or citation violations, right? Because we all want to feel like when we go into a hospital, it's safe. And so they would take all these notes and then they'd have to cross-reference against all the regulations and all the state laws and all the citations and take all that. Imagine the technology knowing all the citations it generates and says, these are the things that we believe, crosswalk, that the citation should be. The surveyor still has to be responsible and validate it's the right one, but it's already given you, like, gotten you halfway there. So having someone to actually help you do your job better, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah. It's great. It's such an incredible tool, and it really is changing sort of the way government operates and delivers services, which I absolutely love. All right, we'll wrap up here. I want to just ask, like, you eventually will retire, maybe when you get into your 50s and are eligible for retirement. What do you want your legacy to be? Like, what do you want, 20 years from now when we're like, oh yeah, that's CIO? What do you want people to sort of remember you and your work for?
Well, part of it is, I mean, the technology is very important, but I think the relationships and building bridges, as you were saying, I've known you for a long time,
Yeah.
and so it's about someone that is willing to solve problems and look at it in a very innovative and unique way, and isn't just bound by the current corners of the box, but is willing to look at things beyond that in order to do the right thing. And remembering at the end of the day, what we're doing is helping Californians. And so it didn't matter if I was working at corrections or if I working in social services or SEO. When I was the chief health director at CalPERS, you just never lost sight of who you were serving. And so you've heard me say, get out of your office. It's
Yeah.
so important. I mean, I'm doing policy, I'm doing all this.
Well, not, but come to your office 4 days a week, but also get out of your office.
I
Yeah.
I mean, when we were doing the digital equity plan, we were out in the communities talking to community-based
Yep.
organizations, hearing from veterans, seniors. I mean, that's where it matters. And when you hear about what struggles they have or where they want government to help them, and my job then is to bridge the divide between what they need, the technology capability, and the departments that can make this all happen. It all requires relationships. So I get things done, as they say, but I do it in a way that hopefully people feel like I'm putting their needs above all else. So that if I had one legacy to leave behind, you may not remember the technology I deployed, but hopefully you remember that ultimately thought of you and put the human back in technology.
Oh, I love that. That's great. Put the human back in technology. Well, thank you so much. This has been incredible. You are by far the biggest star we've ever had on the show. Don't tell Director Gordon that, but It's true. And we just really look forward to continuing to work with you and helping you sort of be a part in that bridge between all of those to put the human first.